coincidence? I don't think so.
Now, this right here is a good
No.
place where Austin needs to take the reins and kind of explain to you about the Astros because he's been doing a lot of good research on them. So, kind of break it down for her and the people who are watching a little bit about the Astros, Austin.
So, in the ancient Hindu religion, or in the ancient Hindu texts, which are the Vedic texts and the Upanishads, these texts talk about what they called astras. Now, the Vedic and the Upanishad texts, which are the central books to the Hindu religion, they were written in an ancient dialect of the Indian language called Sanskrit.
Mm-hmm.
And in Sanskrit, astra supernatural weapon or a weapon that was summoned or controlled by a deity. And the Vedic and scriptures and the Upanishads in Hinduism, they mention over 100 different types of astras. Some of these astras were capable of causing floods that could wipe out continents, and were
Mm-hmm.
capable of causing quakes, and others were capable of causing sea outs, and then there was another astra called the Brahmastra. It was charged with all of the energy of the universe, and it would unleash a flash as bright as 1,000 suns, followed
Mm-hmm.
by a smoky trail that rose heavens. That's and there was still another one that was capable of hollowing out tunnels under the
Mm-hmm.
earth. But these astros, they were controlled by supernatural beings or gods in
Mm-hmm.
the Hindu pantheon.
Well,
And then
actually,
we
it's
look at
everywhere.
ancient.
Just with Zeus and controlling lightning, and it's we have that technology now. If we can do that now on our minute
Yeah,
little level, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, it carried on
Uh,
into the Greek, into the in Roman mythology. You see all these, and even the Norse mythology. You see like Thor with his thunderbolt,
mm-hmm.
and that was kind of the Astras into that was started with the Hindu texts into other religious traditions again down through the ages. And I think they still exist on some level in the form of
Absolutely.
heart and the cloud seeding stuff that we're seeing today, and like the super dark way, which is that's a global network of harp-like devices or these
Mm-hmm.
directed energy.
Weapons.
Then of course, nuclear weapons
Yeah.
knows of that. That could be fall into that category, well, or chemical or biological things such as it still exists on some level.
Yeah, and like imagine, back in the day, an ancient man, seeing something like that. How would they try to explain it? It's a misunderstood technology. They are obviously very intelligent and they have the power of, weather phenomenon and like you said, with the flood and things like that. But that I agree. And
Yeah,
go ahead, take it back.
because Plato, how Plato he talked about how the gods flooded Atlantis as punishment.
Mhm.
Well, how would they have done that? They had to have some
Mhm.
method by which to cause earthquakes and floods that sunk Atlantis in one night. And that's where the Ostras appear, at least from my research, to have carried over in from the or carried over into the Greek traditions from the ancient Hindu traditions that predated them by maybe 2 or 3 thousand years.
Mhm.
Now how the Indus Valley and cults with and the Vedic and Upanishads that came out of Indus Valley civilization carried on into Greek and Egyptian and ultimately Roman tradition. Now that's
Mhm.
kind of a mystery. We don't know exactly. The best we can figure is it had something to do with migration, communication of humans
Mhm.
on these trade routes. That you know, the Silk Road, like you discussed, was one of them,
Mhm.
and that the Silk Road went back. That's transcended civilizations. There were civilizations that came and went, but the Silk Road lasted through all of them.
Yeah.
The 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 Sumerians came and went. The the Akkadians came and went. The Babylonians and Assyrians and the Greeks and the Egyptians and Persians and ultimately the Romans and the Byzantine Empire. All of that came and went. But and the ancient Mongolia came and went with Genghis Khan. But through it all, the Silk Road lasted. And
Mhm.
people traded and communicated, and so that's how I'm assuming that these traditions carried on and transferred to each other. But also, these people witnessed the same things. I mean, we're talking events that far bigger than anything that we've seen in recent history. By which
Yeah.
I mean, the last hundred.
Couple hundred years.
We're
Yeah.
talking about events.
Yeah.
We're talking about events bigger than our great grandparents or and so on and so forth have seen.
Yeah.
So it's stuff that would leave a very lasting impression.
Now, a lot of this
Yeah.
stuff he's talking about
As
too
well.
is going back thousands. And when I'm saying thousands, like our recorded history only goes back to freaking, what was it, 10,000 BC?
Mhm.
You see? So
Rough. Yeah.
this stuff, if it is true, goes back even further than that.
Well, I would assume that it's based on some facts because if it to be such a lasting to leave a lasting impression like carried on through all that time, there's obviously some truth to that footing there.
But let me kind of throw out a
And
little bit
yeah,
of facts here
something.
too first before we go further. Let me kind of give you guys an idea of how old the Sumerians are. Okay? Now, while the Sumerian freaking civilization was going, the mammoths were freaking actually up in the Siberian area, freaking still running the earth alive and not extinct. Okay?
Mm.
So the Willis mammoth was still alive during the time of the Sumerians.
Well,
Okay, that's a long, long time ago.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
But to
But
leave, to leave on that story for it to make it, throughout time and still referred to, there's just in my heart, I just don't feel there's any way. They wouldn't have made up some story and it'd been like some Harry Potter tale, and it just carried on through the hundreds and hundreds of years. Like there's no way. There's no way that makes no sense. So there was obviously some
on too
truth
when you
to
look
it.
at
what'd you
on
say?
too when you look at things like how all these like how I just mentioned about how all these civilizations have came and went and things happened like the Library of Alexandria being the best
Mhm.
example. That all the Romans, they took all those manuscripts out there, they burn them in these furnaces that fueled their public bathhouses, and then later on, what was left of it, the Muslims sacked for religious reasons. They burn it because. But you look at events like the Library of Alexandria, all these civilizations that came and went, and made every attempt to erase each other's history, and how this story we're talking about still lasts down to this day.
Mhm.
It not only, but how did it survive all that intact? It couldn't have through anything other than what I would attribute to some sort of supernatural means. Humanity
Exactly.
needs this story to survive, you
Mhm.
know, because it wouldn't
Yeah.
wars and just. civilization and natural disasters. I mean, we could do a whole series of shows just all that in each one of those in themselves. Well, the story survived all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
it was not only something profound that has occurred, but something that is extremely profound just in the survival of this story we're talking about itself. And I can only attribute it to something supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah, absolutely. I second that.
now with the Indus Valley too, one thing that I do want to point out is and I'm sure you guys read it because I sent those notes to you, and I'm pretty sure you researched it, but just with the Indus Valley, the reason why this culture ended up moving out of the valley was because of environmental problems, climate. You know, the water was drying up and things of that nature, and
Mm-hmm.
it was said that they freaking migrated east. Now, they they really don't know where these people went. The truth of it is
Mm-hmm.
this is a very mysterious civil or culture, I guess is what they're still calling it. But the truth is that their language still hasn't been deciphered. They have
Yeah.
absolutely no idea what the writings, and they have found text. They just cannot decipher it. They do not understand what these people were saying. They do have these cities and everything, but they have no idea what their freaking words meant. And they have been trying to, but they haven't been able to figure that out. Now, I also find it odd that with the Sumerian language, that there's no root language that it comes from, and it's not connected to any modern language that we have today. It is completely independent of.
It was as though the language. It was as though the language appeared like a bolt out of the blue.
Right.
We didn't have a language, and then suddenly we did. Where'd it come from?
Right.
Did the Anunnaki teach man that which he did not know,
Well, it
as the
goes
Sumerians said?
and it goes into this Indus Valley civilization too. You know what I mean? They just vanished. They don't.
Kind of like that one place
So did the Mayans.
here,
Mhm.
like when people were coming over, like with the pilgrims and stuff, and there's that, I
James,
forget what is it called? You
James,
know,
Jamestown, or was it Roanoke? Or was it Jamestown?
Roanoke.
It was one
Yep.
of the. It was one of
Mm-hmm.
the
Went
colonies.
missing.